All right, let's get into it. We all know what milk is, right? But have you ever stopped to think about the incredible biological factory that actually produces it? Today, we're going to take a journey, starting right from the bloodstream of a cow through this amazing microscopic assembly line, all the way to the final product in the bottle. It's a story of biology at its absolute finest.
And this isn't some new idea. Way back over 2,000 years ago, the father of medicine himself, Hippocrates, called milk the most nearly perfect food. I mean, that is a huge statement. So what on earth did he see in this simple white liquid that made him say something so powerful?
Well, the secret isn't just one single thing. It's the entire package. You've got high-quality protein with all the essential amino acids our bodies can't make on their own. It is packed with a whole spectrum of vitamins, gives us a unique sugar called lactose for energy, and it even helps our bodies absorb vital minerals like calcium. I mean, nature basically prepackaged a complete meal for us. So how does nature pull this off? Where is this perfect food created? It all happens inside this incredibly sophisticated, self-contained biological factory, the mammary gland, which, well, we all just know as the udder. So picture this factory. It's organized into 4 main departments, or quarters, and here's the kicker. Each one works totally independently from the others. Now, inside each of these departments, you'll find these clusters of the actual production machinery, which are called lobes. But to see where the real work gets done, we have to zoom in way, way further. Okay, let's go microscopic. The real magic happens in millions, and I mean millions, of these tiny little spherical structures called alveoli. So if the udder is the factory building, the alveoli are the individual assembly lines. And each one is surrounded by this rich network of blood vessels that are constantly delivering all the raw materials needed for production. Let's walk onto that assembly line. Making milk isn't just one simple step. It's actually 2 completely different processes that are happening at the exact same time inside every single one of those little alveoli cells. So the cell has to be a master multitasker. It acts as both a filter and a manufacturer. On one hand, it's doing filtration, just pulling ready-made ingredients like minerals, vitamins, and water straight from the blood. Easy enough. But at the same time, it's also performing synthesis, actively building brand new, totally unique components like casein protein, lactose, and milk fat that just don't exist in the bloodstream. So let's look at that synthesis process first, the manufacturing part. We'll start with 2 of milk's most defining ingredients, its signature sugar and its unique proteins. Making lactose it's a beautiful piece of cellular chemistry, and the process is incredibly efficient. The cell grabs 2 molecules of glucose, that's just a common blood sugar, right out of the bloodstream. Then this special enzyme called lactose synthetase acts like a molecular matchmaker, snapping them together to create 1 molecule of lactose. That's the unique sugar that gives milk that slightly sweet taste. Now, here's where it gets really cool. The amount of lactose that a cell produces directly controls the total volume of milk. So why is that? Well, it all comes down to a basic principle you probably learned in school: osmosis. Lactose is a big molecule and acts like a magnet for water. So the more lactose the cell makes, the more water gets pulled in from the blood. Lactose is literally the engine that drives milk volume. When it comes to protein, the cell is super clever. It's a hybrid process. The signature milk proteins, like casein, are built completely from scratch inside the cell's own little protein factories. But other critical proteins, like the immunoglobulins that give a newborn its immunity, they aren't made there at all. They're just filtered, fully formed straight from the blood. It's like a perfect mix of homemade and imported goods. All right, we've covered the sugars and the proteins. Let's move to the next station on our assembly line, which is a much more physical process: creating milk fat. Now, the way fat gets made is this amazing physical journey. It's built inside the cell and starts clumping together in these teeny tiny droplets. As these little droplets move towards the edge of the cell, they start merging, forming bigger and bigger drops. Then, in this incredible final step, the big fat droplet literally pushes its way out of the cell, and get this, it takes a piece of the cell's own membrane with it as a protective coating. It's like being gift-wrapped on the way out the door. Okay, so this process explains something you see all the time in dairy farming. For cows, the main raw material for making fat isn't actually fat they eat. It's a compound called acetate, which they get from digesting forage, things like grass and hay.
So if a cow's diet is too high in green and too low in forage, the factory simply doesn't get the primary building blocks it needs, and the result? The assembly line can't make enough fat, and you end up with low-fat milk.
So the factory has been working around the clock. Millions of these alveoli are now totally full of perfectly made milk. But here's the thing, producing it is only half the battle. Now you have to get it out, and that requires one last absolutely crucial step, the letdown reflex. This is this fantastic neurohormonal chain reaction. It all starts with a physical touch, like a calf nursing or even just the udder being washed. That sends a nerve signal all the way up to the brain. The brain then responds by releasing the hormone oxytocin into the blood. Oxytocin travels all the way back down to the udder, and when it gets there, it triggers these tiny muscle cells that are wrapped around each alveolus. These muscles contract, they squeeze the alveoli, and that forces all the milk out into the collecting ducts. And where does all that squeezed milk go? It flows into this collecting area called the gland cistern. Now, just to give you a sense of scale here, each of the 4 cisterns in an udder can hold up to 500 milliliters of milk. That is about the volume of a standard water bottle in just 1/4 of the udder. Okay, one last puzzle that ties this whole thing together. Remember those fat droplets, the ones gift-wrapped in a membrane? Well, they're pretty big, and they tend to be a little sticky, clinging to the inside surfaces of the alveoli. So the first milk that gets squeezed out is mostly the watery part. But as that oxytocin-powered squeeze keeps going, it gets strong enough to finally dislodge these sticky, fat-rich droplets. And that is exactly why the very last milk to be collected is always the highest in fat. So we've just toured this amazing biological factory that operates under perfectly sterile conditions to create a nutritionally perfect food. So why does understanding all this internal stuff matter so much in the outside world? It really all comes down to one single concept: milk hygiene. And this isn't just about keeping things clean, wiping stuff down. It's the whole shebang, all the conditions and measures you need to make sure milk stays safe and suitable at every single stage of the food chain. We're talking the entire journey, from the farm to your fork. And this right here is the main takeaway. Nature goes to extraordinary lengths to create a perfect product in a perfectly sterile environment. The second that milk leaves the factory of the udder, it becomes vulnerable. All of that immense biological effort can be ruined in an instant. Protecting that perfection becomes our #1 job. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. If nature designs a perfect food inside a perfect factory, what is our single greatest responsibility? It's not to try and improve it. It's simply to protect it, to preserve the incredible quality and safety that biology worked so hard to create in the first place. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.